The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guest, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or the Webster Rockhill Ministries, its management, or other host or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented on KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Arnold Stricker with In Tune.
We are having a fabulous time here. Let's not underestimate this.
We were having such a great time, we almost missed. we had to quickly put our headphones back on.
We always do that.
It was like, wow.
We always have a great time. That's why we know that the Facebook Live people, they're getting that behind the scenes thing that's going on here. And so they get to hear a lot and see a lot.
Now, for all of you who were on the radio and you didn't get a chance to hear some of that behind the scenes, you can actually go to Radio 63119 Facebook page and catch that Facebook, and you can watch us, because I'm waving right now at everybody.
What was that?
That was a wave. I'll give the
parade wave.
This is the parade wave, yes. No, we have Jan Burmeister, who has been telling us for the last hour about her unbelievable life that she has had, and that life started here in St. Louis. She has worked for many presidents, really was a lot involved with President George H.W. Bush's family as the personal secretary of the family, and giving correspondence out, etc., like that. And I had left the first hour, was reading a little bit about some life principles that President Bush had written down. Life is an adventure. Develop and keep a genuine enthusiasm and zest for life. He also, I'm just going to highlight some of these, Jan, and just kind of would like your comments on them as we go. Maintain your personal well-being.
He was an athlete. The Secret Service would just be exhausted at the end of the day. He'd get up and go jogging, then he'd play tennis, then he'd play golf, then he'd go jogging again, then he'd go out on his boat if he was in Kennebunkport. And I mean, they were like, stop.
And then every now and then he'd actually sign a bill or something. I got to go in there.
But I mean, he was really he fit, which I think must have frustrated him those last couple of years when he was in a scooter chair and then ultimately a wheelchair.
And how old was he when he passed away?
94.
Yeah,
94.
He was 94.
Yeah, I knew he was up there
because
he, what was it, like 89 when he did his last parachute jump or something?
90.
Good night.
89, 90.
You got to have good physical fitness at 90 to jump out of an airplane.
It's funny because when he was 80, he did that also, and it was he invited Mikhail Gorbachev to jump with him. And Mr. Gorbachev,
he wasn't going to give Gorbachev a parachute.
Mr. Gorbachev said, no, but I'll be on the ground to greet you. And
I'll be waiting for you.
He was. So when Bush landed, Gorbachev was right there on the big target mark with a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of vodka.
Well, to see if he had gone up there and they had pushed him off, he'd have had to drink that vodka on the way down.
And then we all went into the tent for a big barbecue, and I turned around, and there is Mikhail Gorbachev dancing with Barbara Bush to the Oak Ridge Boys. And I said, "There's what?"
That's great. What a great story.
That is very funny. Yeah, but I could see you saying to, Mikhail Gorbachev, because he did not look like he was like the fittest guy in the world there, But
well, compared to the current guy who likes to go shirtless everywhere.
But Bush taught him how to play horseshoes up at Camp David.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Got a horseshoe story for you that involves St. Louis. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a frequenter, and there was a horseshoe pit at the White House in the back. So I got the idea to get one of the Clydesdale horseshoes sets and have them chromed and have those hanging for Arnold to use when he came. And
I need bigger horseshoes.
Augie Bush made that all possible. I've got all the correspondence on that, and that was kind of fun. I carried that in my luggage, and I imagine whoever went through my luggage wondered what in the heck were these two Clydesdale horseshoes doing.
Now, I liked the story that you said about George H.W. Bush and what happened when you left your coffee cup.
Oh, my goodness. Well, 4 months after he got back to Houston after his presidency, the country of Kuwait wanted to celebrate him and thank him for freeing them from Saddam Hussein. So they sent a 747 for him and his family to come over, and they celebrated. And they had all kinds of events and parades, and they invited people over there in Kuwait to give gifts. So people would open their cupboards and get one of their favorite things and write a note. And long story short, the plane coming back was full of gifts. So I had to spend the next couple of weeks logging it all, appraising it all. Actually had to return 2 Persian carpets because he had signed the embargo against Iran. Anyway, I'm working on this around the clock, and I needed a scissors, so I went around to my office to get a scissors, and when I came back, my coffee cup was gone. And the conference room was right next to the kitchen, and I heard somebody in the kitchen. I went in, and there's the former leader of the free world washing dishes. And he looked at me and he said, what would you like in your coffee now? And it was ever the servant, ever the servant. I thought, there's something wrong with this picture, but no, there's something so right with this picture.
Yeah. What was Camp David like? It's billed as this retreat, in the mountains.
It is, and I can describe it. I was never there. That was one of my regrets, is I never got to actually go there. But yeah, it was a wonderful getaway retreat, secure, run by the Navy. Oh, the Navy, the cooks were incredible in the White House mess and up at Camp David. Yeah, wonderful. And they always carved food so beautifully. Yeah, I've got wonderful pictures of that.
Our tax dollars at work.
That's right. Well, there is a certain, I guess, expectation that you're just not going into, Joe Blow's house and, throwing some slop on the everyday wear. And,
yeah.
Yeah, no plastic on the furniture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you get on, you peel your backside off.
You pick the cushion up with you as you go. So here's another one. Take the time to be appreciative and grateful.
Oh my, he wrote so many thank you notes. So many thank you notes, and you've seen some of them. He would write the staff notes and thank them for doing their job.
And they weren't long notes.
No.
It doesn't take a long time to do that, but it takes time to think about doing that, so it becomes an everyday or a normal kind of thing where you've got a stack of these things. You pull it out, you see something, you write it down, and you give it.
Well, isn't it now we can do it in 40 characters?
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness.
40 characters.
Oh yeah, I don't think he would have limited himself to that. So.
No, I don't think so.
Learn to be unselfish and generous with your goods, your time, your understanding, and your experience.
He got that from his mom. As a matter of fact, he got a lot of those principles. Things he learned from his parents became a part of his life and really changed the world. And, learning to forgive and be slow to judge. I mean, I'll just never forget the many ways that came out in his life. He journaled a lot, and when he went to Hirohito's funeral, he had been shot down in World War II, and Hirohito, that turned out
right,
and he sat there at the funeral, forgiving him in his heart for World War II. I mean, it was just incredible.
Yeah, it says here, don't forget to include the little guys.
Always the little guys.
Boy, that needs to be said again today, in today's world. Don't forget the little guys, the folks that put you there, right?
Yep. After the swearing-in ceremony, when he was going to get on the plane to go back to Houston, Clinton had been sworn in, he spent that last plane ride, I was on that plane ride, giving tours to anybody who had never been on Air Force One. Took him up to the cockpit. I mean, the little stewards. And that's how he spent his last plane ride. Mm-hmm. But he was always looking around to see who wasn't being taken care of. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, now, folks, I'm reading from a 4-page list, and
I put that together.
Yeah, and Jan put this together of George H.W. Bush's life principles. Here's another one: be slow to judge others, extend lots of olive branches, and learn to forgive. You kind of mentioned that.
Yeah.
Respond with caring, compassion, and concern to those in need.
Yeah. Oh my!
I love this. Let concern reach beyond our backyards and our benevolence beyond our borders to embrace all of mankind: the homeless, poverty, hunger, the environment, and the disabled. And this next one is, I think, a core principle. Live by the basics of integrity. Of course, you have to understand what the basic meaning of integrity is. But I want to read this, if this is all right. Deplore hatred, discrimination, violence, and injustice. Stand against tyranny. Applaud goodness, decency, and fair play. Speak the truth. Uphold justice. Defend peace and freedom. Don't let negatives, fears, or criticism dictate your course. Do the right thing, show grace under fire, and take no counsel from your fears. Always weigh the options. Try to find a balance and know when to compromise. Politics versus friendships. Entitlements versus tax cuts. Dove versus hawk. Liberty versus license. Know your motives. Do what you do to get something more or out of gratitude for what you have, and stay flexible.
And everyone who knew him recognized these things in him. That's why the turnout at the funeral was so spectacular. I mean, it wasn't just the numbers of people, but it was the comments and the quality of the tributes and the eulogies. And a lot of people, especially the younger kids who didn't even know who this guy was, saw that and said, wow, what was special about this guy? You just read a lot of it.
Here's another one. Develop and practice other positive character traits and attitudes. Build solid leadership skills. We've talked about this on the show a lot, Jan, that what is really lacking, I have seen in every form of government, other institutionalized things, education, business, is really a lack of solid leadership, a lack of people who can take the reins of something and draw it and pull it together and move things forward. It just seems like nobody's willing to step up to the plate to accept responsibility. Right.
But don't you think that leadership is an innate quality? It's one that training then brings out of you. But it's got to be inside of you from the very beginning. And the tenets that you're talking about here, those have to be inside of you already. And then the ability to use it is what then it brings to the forefront and helps to develop it. But, you've got to have it inside of you first.
And the great men that I've known and had the privilege to work for, like Jack Hayford, all have
that within them.
And they know how to delegate and encourage and, by example, lead. Nothing is beneath them. They do it, and then they lift you up to that point and show you how, and it's just a wonderful thing.
As evidenced by washing the dishes.
Or by taking the stewards and showing them around Air Force One.
Yeah.
It's never that somebody is beneath you, because in as I always have said in one of the books that I wrote, the most important person in the corporation is the janitor.
Right.
And you don't realize it until the day that he doesn't show up.
Right.
And you're the one sitting in the John with no paper. Okay.
That's correct.
All of a sudden, not the CEO. You don't get on the phone and call the CEO and tell him to bring over a roll,
Right.
Well, and it's the difference, too, in relationships and friendships that you build, of it being superfluous or of it being genuine. And when you genuinely care for someone, they never forget it. I mean, you've given them a value that they don't get from a lot of other people. And so many, I mean, the people that wrote, there were almost as many people that wrote condolences as wrote congratulatories, and the things they said were very similar. How their lives were changed and how they were lifted up. And that's a great thing for us to strive to do.
Right.
Not always think of ourselves and where we want to go, but who we can take with us where we're going.
So,
now, what was Barbara Bush like? I have to ask that question.
She was, don't get between her and her children, but wonderful and caring, and they were so in love to the end. And she, too, was a letter writer and just caring. And when I told you, when I saw their house where they lived, nothing fancy. And they had lived all over the world. They had been in China. And it was all like little chenille bedspread and little slippers under the bed. And I mean, everything was just so cozy and down to earth. Just down to earth.
That's good to hear. I mean, that was my impression of her.
I have to tell you this story. I asked her, they were in Kennebunkport, I was staying in their house, could I have a dinner party? I had to ask her permission. Well, of course. Well, I had one of their sons over and his wife and some people from the office. Pulled out all the stops, had a great dinner. Broke a wine glass in the dishwasher while I was cleaning up. And I thought, I've got to replace this. So I went around to Neiman Marcus. I went to all these places. And one of the ladies in the fancy store held it up and she said, "This is from Crate and Barrel." So I went to Crate and Barrel with the broken glass to buy a new one. And she said, I remember when Barbara came in here and bought those. She wanted something she could throw at George.
Oh, that is too funny.
That's hilarious.
That is hilarious.
And then I was still cleaning up. About 2 weeks later, I took the tablecloth off, and there were watermarks all over her wooden dining room table. So I got on the phone and asked people what to do, and they said toothpaste and ashes and mayonnaise. I tried everything, and I finally thought, I've got to have somebody professionally refinish this table. So I called a furniture guy, and he came out with his toolbox, and he refinished the whole table. He found out whose house it was, and he didn't charge me. So that was good, but at least it was repaired. Well, at my going away party, I told this story, and Barbara Bush said, "Honey, those watermarks have been there for years."
That's hilarious.
Oh, no.
Thanks for refinishing the table for us.
She is like so nice.
I've been wanting to do that for 45 years. That happened the Thanksgiving dinner in 1952.
Oh, yeah, that George. I remember when he did that. A funny little boy.
Here's another one of these principles. Grasp the awe of American freedom. Remember what it cost other Americans. Be proud of what they paid for and be willing to do your part.
Amen. Yeah.
And lastly, you have, what would we do without faith, family, and friends?
Oh, I heard that so
I
often,
can't
yeah.
even imagine, to be honest with you. You know, you're right. Without faith, family, and friends, you know, life would be pretty bleak. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be pretty bleak. And I think that it's what helps people to heal, you know, as we get older. The importance of faith, family, and friends becomes even more a part of who we are.
Why do you think that is, Ellie?
Well, first of all, we figure that if we don't get it right now, you know, those last 30 years, we're going to go down in flames. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think what it does is it gives us a chance to reflect. We reflect on all that we've gone through. We reflect on all of the people that we've known, you know, and you see how different people's lives have played out. And again, with you in faith-based situations, you look and you get a chance to see those who really lifted up the Lord versus those who lifted up themselves.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, and so you have those things to look at, you know, but then you also, you know, just are able to kind of put it all together, pull it all together, you know, just like if you were to write the book. Mm-hmm. You could pull it all together, and your book would be called "I've Got Another Funny Story." You know, because then you think about all of those fun things.
Well, you know, when the book's going to be written is when we're going to spend an eternity learning how God's pinball machine worked on earth. His ways are so much higher than ours, and when he bounces us off of each other, he's bouncing us off of each other today, and the results of all of those bounces are going to be a constant source of blessing to us when we get there. It's just going to be, I could have had a V8. I mean, how wonderful was that? I couldn't have thought of that. Thank you, Lord. And then we're going to fall down at his feet.
And you do think about things that happen. I mean, I often reflect back on just this radio station and how if I had done the things that I had wanted to do at the time when the Lord says, no, we're getting ready to return you back to St. Louis, there would have been no radio station. You know,
right.
My husband and I, we were headed off to Palau. That was our next stop because we were living in Panama. So we're getting ready to go to Palau. And then my husband gets a diagnosis. You've got cancer. Oh, no. Pack up, end of journey, head back home. And get back here and find out there's the opening for the radio station. You know, and so you look at all of that and, you know, the Lord says, okay, my plan was for you to do this. Yes, you thought you were going to do that, but my plan was for you to do this.
And when you can turn around and see his hand on that part of your life, it gives you the faith and the trust to trust him in all things, so that when the next storm comes, you just wait for the silver lining because you know it's there. You know that he's got some reason. And when you can't see it, don't have to know it anymore, because you just know that's the way he is. It's just getting to know him better.
That is very true. I agree with you there. Because then you realize that, like you said, it's not about you. You are just the vessel that is being used to make all of this happen. Because I think about Arnold. You know, I didn't really know Arnold. I think I met you because I interviewed you when you were
running for school board.
And we didn't really even have a radio station at that time.
Right.
You know, I was just kind of like doing it out of my computer. And then...
And posting it on SoundCloud.
That's right. And posting it on SoundCloud. And then, you know, and that's how meeting so many wonderful people, it has happened that exact same way. You know, didn't know Chris. And then all of a sudden, you know, Chris was moving to St. Louis and was looking for a little bit of something to do, you know, to keep him from being bored and keep him out of trouble. And now, you know, I mean, he's like the most invaluable person here, you know, and so everything happens in a certain way. And, you know, it's like, as long as you know that you're following God's plan, he'll bring it all to you.
And he does, even when we don't ask for it. You know, we have not because we ask not. We should be asking for every little thing. He loves that. He would love that. Yeah, ask me for it. I'd love to give it to you. And, you know, when you see him do things that you didn't even ask for, that's even more remarkable.
You just have to recognize it. That's the thing. You have to recognize it and then be able to be thankful and grateful for it. And that's why when I'm listening to the statements that you were reading about gratitude, that seems to be such a core, you know, to what President Bush was about. You know, that they were grateful for the opportunity that they had. Because as I said, too much that is given, much is required. You know, and you think about how many people have a lot and then what they've done with it.
Well, thankfulness is a trait that you really have to learn. You know, there's not a lot of people who thankful or being generous is something you have to learn. And I think a lot of it comes from in a response to what you've been given and how you should be thankful for the things you've received and the benefits. You know, I remember when you were talking, Jan, it reminded me of a statement that I've made several times, is we need to take God for who he says he is, not for who we think he is. And if we got that part of that statement together, we might have different attitudes towards other people and towards the things that he's blessed us with. And
thankfulness is a discipline, really.
Yes.
I learned it from Jack Hayford, to be able to praise and thank him even for the bad things. That's
a
hard.
tough one.
It's hard.
Yeah, I often read Paul and I think about all the things that Paul went through.
Oh my!
You know, and that last that boat ride that he took from Malta, and I think about what he had gone through, what he had to go through. Most people at that point would have just said, "You know what? No. I'm not getting paid enough for this one.
Yeah, I'm done with this.
I'm done with this one." You know, and we do have to look at the fact that, you know, that God gives us things, and he doesn't give it to us in a smooth package. You know, he doesn't give it to us all fixed up and all we have to do is just present it. But he helps us in our own personal growth as a result of being a part of that.
Because he wants us to grow in our relationship with him.
With him.
It reminds me of two songs. The storm is passing over. You know, the storm is passing over. And another one is peace in the midst of the storm.
That's it.
So we know the storm's going to pass over, but there's peace in the midst of that storm that's going to pass over. Like if you want to go from mountaintop to mountaintop, you have to go through the valley to get there. You just can't leap over there. And a lot of people don't like going through the valley.
Yeah.
Preach, Pastor Arnold, preach.
Hey, we're talking to Jan Burmeister. And she has had a big life adventure and continues to have that life adventure. And I think, Jan, where I want to go in this last half hour is ask you, and I'm kind of prompting you to think about this while we're on break, is what are some surprises that surprised you along the way, especially with the Bushes or being in D.C., and what are some things that maybe took you back, shocked you? Everybody's human, and I'm not looking for the deficiencies here necessarily, but stories that give insight into a greater character of them as a family or as individuals, but also as or or the entire DC scene. And we've kind of talked about that
yes.
you have to have your act together and you're squared away. Otherwise, you can kind of, really lose things pretty quickly. We don't want to lose you folks, so stay tuned. This is In Tune with Arnold and Ellie. Listen to KWRHLP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Welcome back to the Rug Cutters on In Tune. Hey, we were dancing it up here.
Yes.
Cutting a rug.
This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. We're talking to Jan Burmeister. I asked Jan before the break, disappointments or wows or surprises that you found along the way over the years?
Well, I think in DC in general, I couldn't have lasted there forever because there's a lot of waste. We all know that. And it's a mentality, and there are people that try to rein it in, and they're not very successful. I think because there are so many resources there, and people just don't know how to be good stewards of them. I'll never forget, I used to just cringe every time I looked in a wastebasket because people would throw documents in there and leave the paper clips on.
It's
so
true.
One time in the West Wing, one evening I stayed late and I went around to every single wastebasket and I pulled all the paper clips and I counted them. And then from my statistical analysis days at the postal headquarters, I did a formula and came up with a savings of $56,000 a year if people wouldn't throw paper clips in the wastebasket.
Our tax dollars at work.
There you go.
I mean, but that's significant.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. I mean, you start to add that up, and then you go.
But nobody takes the time to do that.
Right, but then you go to rubber bands. And then you just go to pieces of paper that are wasted.
Right,
you know,
right.
like you scribbled something and it's like, and then you toss
look at this.
No.
All my stuff's on the back of previous stuff.
Good.
And you see,
Good.
when I make
Good.
copies, I make them on both sides.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then surprises, fun, good surprises. They had something every Memorial Day called Rolling Thunder in Washington, D.C. And I'll never forget, it was about 35 years ago. I was eating at a rooftop restaurant in downtown D.C., and I heard this roar. And we looked over the side, and there must have been like 3,000 motorcyclists, and they were cutting through the city. And I said, "What is that?" Well, that's a veterans group, and they're called Rolling Thunder. And every year they come through to draw attention to POWs and MIAs. Well, long story short, over the years that thing grew, and people came from all over the country. The last one I was at, there were 475,000 bikers.
Good night.
And they could no longer ride through the city. They had a specific route. But the only place big enough to stage that is the Pentagon parking lot. So I decided I wanted to go down there, and they start gathering at 6 in the morning, and they don't start parading till noon. So I had 6 hours to just go down and experience the sea of wonderful motorcycles. So I'm walking around down there, and I see these white tents. And there's a sign on the white tents saying Christian Motorcyclists Association. And they were handing out free water and snacks, and they were praying with people, and they were blessing bikes. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. So I started talking to them. And over the course of 3 years, I started housing them and having them over to dinner. I had a lot of Harleys it was wonderful. Anyway, when I came back to St. Louis, they said, "Why don't you join?" Well, I don't have a bike. If you can pray and volunteer, you can join. And in order to wear their colors, you have to pass a 12-week ministry training program. So I did that. I've got the leathers now.
I was going to say, you got a leather jacket.
Oh yeah.
Chaps.
And they go to secular biker things. They go to Sturgis. They're at all of them. And they do the same thing. They just volunteer, and they're servanthood, and they pray with people and bless bikes. And they'll do it at a gas station. When they spot, they'll go over and start talking bikes, and before you know it, they'll put their arm around somebody. And I mean, yeah, they're 160,000 members worldwide.
Wow.
And they raise $5 million a year for missions. And it's split 4 ways between the Jesus Film Project and Missionary Ventures, which is they provide jungle transportation to missionaries. Brother Andrew, Open Doors, and then evangelizing the secular biker community. It's wonderful.
Wow.
That kind of gives me chills, just first of all, just to even think about the numbers of bikers, because you don't really think about those kind of numbers, 475,000
Right.
bikers converging into one
Right.
area. First of all, to me, that's a little scary because what we see in the movies again when it comes to bikers are more of the Hells Angels kind of guys that are coming in there to shoot the place up.
Oh no, they really respect these guys. As a matter of fact, they hold them accountable. One of their evangelists was in a restaurant, and one of these big burly bad guys came in, and he had one of our back patches, and he threw it on the table, and he said, "I found this on a guy in a bar, and he was drunk. He's not one of you," and he ripped off his colors. So yeah,
Gee.
amazing. But that was a nice surprise, a nice outcome to just meet those folks and be able to bring that experience back to Missouri with me.
What is it like when you're around the career employee? You know, the people that are there regardless. And I know that there are a lot at the top that, you know, they get thrown out with the bathwater.
Right.
But then there are those that stay there from one regime to the next.
Right.
That's really what it is, one regime to the next. And how do they handle that?
Well, it's interesting. Everybody handles it differently. And we were talking in the break about career employees or government employees in general. I'm going to give a percent here, and I don't know if anybody's going to disagree with me, but probably 30% are on fire and love their job and can't wait till the next day, and the rest are just kind of watching the clock and collecting a paycheck. And they do what they have to do to get by, but they take all their vacation, and that's another source of waste I didn't like seeing. But you don't have to look at that. You just have to make sure you're there doing your job and doing it for the right reasons. And you just have to focus on that.
That is amazing. But when you say 30%, I mean, that's a pretty low number. I don't know how that ranks in terms of people in corporate America.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
You know, but that's a pretty low percentage when you think that only 30% are really on fire for doing their job.
I can tell you in the publishing industry, it's about 30-72.
37.
Wow.
Also, wow.
That is, no wonder it takes so long to get things
Now,
done.
it was different. When we started Homeland Security, it was different because that was a new project.
Well, people had
there was a reason. And bringing 22 agencies together was a real experience because everybody had their own way of doing things. And I was in charge of the lexicon for Homeland Security. And you had military, civilians, law enforcement, politicos, all using the same words and meaning different things. So we had lawyers from the agencies knock down dragouts over definitions of terms because based on the outcome of the term definition, they had to go back and rewrite all of their manuals.
So when the doesn't mean the.
Or is.
That's right. Is. That's
That's
right.
the
Exactly.
one.
Yeah.
No, that's the big thing. It's kind of always been a bugaboo of mine, and I guess a soapbox is, man, people just need to do their jobs, period. Yeah. And I don't know, I can speculate as to why, but it was never something that was an issue with me or for me. Was to you do it right, or don't do it all. You know, don't sign up for it unless you're going to do it and do it correctly. And if I don't know how to do it correctly, you find out what you're supposed to do. What are the things? A lot of people, they don't like people pushing work too hard because then more will be expected out of them. Or, well, if you were able to do this, then you can do that all the time. Or look at this person, they're really going gun ho. Why aren't you doing that? You know, it's taken 4 or 5 of you to do this, and this person just did that by themselves. But I see this in the media, not the media in general, but I read about it or hear about it, that certain situations happen because people are really not, basically, what I'm getting out of it is they're basically not fulfilling their responsibilities that they had agreed to. And they're falling short in the expectations of what they're doing. And nobody's holding them accountable, i.e. the lack of leadership. Because good leadership will hold people accountable.
And then, too, you know, I think that when you start to look at the whole concept of mindfulness and thoughtfulness as well, you know, there has to be something within you, first of all, that makes you want to get up and just go and do and be the best that you can absolutely be. And, you know, I mean, it goes down to every level of job. You know, you think about, this is a good example. Think about the people that come around and collect your trash every week. Okay, it seems like a job that, you know, that certain people do that kind of a job. But what if they did that job sloppily? What if when they dump your trash, that papers fly all out and they leave them all over the...
You'd read about it on Community Connect.
That's right, exactly.
Or read about it in the Webster Kirkwood Times.
That's right,
and
exactly.
the letters to the editor.
But, that would make a difference in how you view that person. And so we never think of them doing this great job because after they leave, guess what? There's no trash on the streets. The trash cans are put back. They're orderly and everything is good. It's when they don't do their job and you walk out and half your trash is still on the curb.
Yeah.
That's when you look at it and you notice how important their job really is.
You would think if somebody couldn't be proud of the job they're doing, they should leave. But then there's the paycheck and the complacency and the comfort zone, and I mean, it has to be, you're right, from inside you.
It does have to come from there.
If I weren't doing a good job or being proud of the contribution I was making, I needed to move on. And how do you teach somebody that?
Or you have a leadership that encourages people, saying how important what they're doing is to the greater community. And that it's like talking to a custodian. That I remember talking to custodians saying, you have one of the most important jobs of the school. And they looked at me crazy. I'm saying, you set the tone for learning and what happens inside this building. If this building looks like a dump on the outside, the parents and the kids who show up, they're going to go, well, you're going to send it unconsciously. Learning's not important here because you can't even take care of the physical property. We don't keep our money in banks that look overgrown or look, torn down. We keep our money, and that's why they keep them all looking nice. Well, wow, it must be really tight on security and really got their act together. So if a school building looks tight, and if the rooms look tight, if the floors are clean and sparkle and the trash taken out, there's no paper clips left on the trash as they go in. You know what I'm talking about, because, man, when you miss that or the toilet paper roll's not there,
that's right.
That's a big deal. People aren't going to be concerned about learning if I don't have enough toilet paper. That's what they're concerned about. And my basic needs are not being taken care of.
And think about when you went to school. You think about all your teachers that you had and the principals and everything. But I bet almost everybody remembers the custodian in their school. Because
and the cafeteria.
And that's right, and the cafeteria
and the secretary.
Lady. That's right, because those people, made a difference in many, many ways.
That's right.
Many ways. I mean, there were times when I know that out here, when young men would get into some kind of trouble or do something that was not right, it was a custodian, says, boy, come down here to the boiler room. Let me talk to you, and they would come out of there and they'd be straight. Mm-hmm. Not the counselor, not the principal, but the custodian.
They were the counselor, not in title.
That's right.
But they were counseling. I think about also using the trash example of how, and this goes back to some of the things about life being an adventure and some life principles, is that how inconsiderate it is of members of the community to expect the people who pick up the trash to do certain things because they're not putting the trash in it correctly or just leaving it laid out there on the lawn area for them to pick. Like you're going to pick this up. There's certain requirements that they have for our trash, and some people they don't.
One of them is putting it in the trash can.
Exactly.
Not leaving it on the side of the trash can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or making sure the lid's closed.
And let it not be beneath us to pick something up off the floor.
Oh my gosh, are we supposed to do that?
I do that quite a bit. I just get a plastic bag and I go through my neighborhood for about 2 different blocks, around my house, and I'll just pick up trash and pick up this and pick up that, pick up, cigarette butts, pick up papers that the old Webster Kirkwood Times that have been out there and the person has driven over them and they're wet and mucky looking, and, because it's my whole neighborhood.
Right.
And the custodians of the world may be at the head table in heaven. I mean, the first will be last and the last will be first. We got to remember that.
When the leader is picking up trash, other people will start following the example.
There you go.
That is right. I carry actually a little extra bag in my car because if I go around and I see stuff thrown on I will stop and pick the stuff up right then and there. And I even saw a classmate the other day and he saw me do the exact same thing. I pulled around the corner and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. And I stopped and got my little trash can and he hollered out, what are you doing over there? I said, just picking up trash.
Because he had been out there previously with his blower and blew it over on your property.
Oh, every time I see a styrofoam cup fly out somebody's window,
man.
I don't know what to do. I'm angry. I don't want to,
Who do you think's going to pick that up?
Yeah, I want to speed up and go by him and say, what are you thinking?
I get behind him and give him the lip. So they're looking behind him.
Oh,
Yes, it's true though. But it is good to see. It is good to hear that there is a nice shiny, level of integrity and goodwill, that comes out of Washington, because everything we hear is just horrible.
Yeah, you're not going to hear the good stuff.
Because it doesn't make press.
That's it. It doesn't, it's not as much fun. I was just reading about that. They were talking about how over in England, how, they're making the big fuss about, that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are flying in a jet, but then the little thing about, Prince Edward and the sexual scandal is kind of like, well, we don't really want to talk about that part of it, but they got on a private jet, the carbon footprint. So it does kind of make it, when you look at what people tune into.
I'm sure they'd say, well, you want us to fly on a paper airplane? Not going to work.
Not going to work.
Speaking of England, I saw at a big box store last night, somebody was driving off and they had this big photograph of the Queen in the back window. And I stopped and I went and a little wave, and I thought it was funny.
That was very funny.
Now, Jan, thank you very much for coming on the show today. And
it was my pleasure. It was so much fun.
It was. My goodness, you are just a wealth. I tell you, if you ever wrote the book, you didn't have to. Don't put down names, of course.
No.
To protect the half guilty or half innocent, whichever way you look at it. But just funny stories, the anecdotes, the things that you have experienced have just been really beyond most people's wildest imagination.
Well, it's been a blessing, and again, I didn't plan any of it, so I'll be ever thankful to the Lord for taking me in the many. I wouldn't recommend this checkered life to anybody because there's no stability in it, and certainly not a lot of financial security. But He's provided all along the way, and He knew like I said, we're going to spend an eternity, and I know that I'm going to meet people up there that say, you know what, that day I sat next to you on the metro in D.C. and it's going to be great. I'm going to put in one word for something else that I learned.
Absolutely.
Especially from President Bush. He started Points of Light Foundation, and he said service to others must be a part of your life to be successful. And so volunteering is just something we all need to do. It should be we should carve it into our daily schedules, really, and find something that you enjoy. Find something that is a need in your community. I've enjoyed volunteering for St. Louis Health Equipment Lending Program. They collect used medical equipment, clean it up, and give it to people that need it for free.
Wow.
I'm volunteering for a Christmas concert organization, and that's going to be fun. And you meet the most wonderful people because everybody's got a giving heart, and it's something I would encourage everybody to do.
Great. We appreciate you being here, Jan.